What is going on, everyone? This is the return of the RCW podcast. We're going to talk about where it's been, why the hiatus, why it's back, so forth and so on. So to get right into it, as a little refresher for those that may not know, this is a WWE channel, a pro WWE channel. That does not mean it is an anti-AEW channel or anti any other wrestling channel. That is not what it means. I enjoy all pro wrestling, but on this channel, I simply cover WWE-related topics, okay? Kind of keeps things streamlined. I don't go over all the other stuff because I just don't have all the time in the world to do this. So we only cover WWE stuff here, okay? But we are not opposed to any of the other companies. So before you go crazy in the comments, this is not anti-AEW or anti-TNA or anything like that, or anti-Indies, okay? It's just a pro WWE channel. Now, to further that, the channel was more so geared to Bray Wyatt. And this is where the hiatus comes into play because, as we all know, unfortunately, a few months back, Bray Wyatt has passed away. And I'll be honest with you, it completely destroyed my love for wrestling. I'm a guy, I'm 42 years old. I grew up in the 80s era and the 90s era and so forth and so on. And I had all my favorites through those eras, okay? But when Bray came onto the scene, he was the one that I gravitated towards as far as the modern day. Two wrestlers I gravitated towards, and he was one of the main ones, okay? So he was my favorite, along with one other in the modern era that I gravitated towards and really enjoyed their work, okay? Like, I had to watch every week when he was there because it was just that important to me, which I did not have that since the days of Stone Cold and The Rock, or Bret Hart and Shawn, or Hulk Hogan and Macho Man, okay? I know, these people went to other different companies. I did watch some WCW back in the day when it was on. I watched plenty of TNA. I really enjoyed the early TNA years. But then, of course, all we had was WWE for the longest time, and then AEW came around and things like this. And when I started this, I started it because of the return of Bray Wyatt after being unceremoniously let go by the company. And everything that he had done up to that point, the Firefly Funhouse and all that, the new, the Fiend and everything was really fresh still throughout the pandemic era. And then he was gone, and I was really bummed out about that and just hopeful he'd come back. And every week I'm hoping he would come back because that's really what I look forward to. I like the outlandish, over-the-top sports entertainment aspect of pro wrestling, and that goes with any of the companies when they do it, okay? That's my favorite part of it. I love the in-ring competition, in-ring skills and everything else, and the match quality. I love all that, but I have to have the story and the theatrics too. That's part of what I love about it. So when he finally did come back, I was ecstatic, to say the least. I was all in on the White Rabbit thing and everything like that, and just super excited about it. And then it kind of dragged on, and we got to the Pitch Black match and everything else, and people have their opinions of that. I thought it was cool. It was, classic Bray Wyatt stuff. And LA Knight obviously went to the next level by being involved in a program with Bray Wyatt, as we know. But then after that, he disappeared again. And this time it was because of his health, and it was kind of a scary thing. Like, man, I hope he's okay. And then they kept saying, there's rumors he's going to return and this and that. And then, unfortunately, we found out that he did pass away. And I'm not going to go over the circumstances here. You can easily find that out by looking it up yourself. But it's very unfortunate and sad. And honestly, when I got that news, my whole entire love for wrestling just died. It died right along with him because that was what my favorite, aspect of wrestling, pro wrestling was at that time. I had some things in AEW that I liked too, but as far as WWE, which we're focused on here, that's what I liked the most. That's what I was really gravitating towards the most. And then it was just such a shock to the system that, man, it just killed my vibe of pro wrestling altogether. And I just didn't want to watch it anymore. And I didn't watch any pro wrestling. I swear I did not watch any pro wrestling for at least the last 3 months ever since it happened. I have not watched a single bit of it until recently, of course. But yeah, it just completely annihilated my love for it, and I was hoping that something would happen to reignite that flame and that fire and the passion for it. And then my city hasn't had any WWE live events since Payback, because I'm in Pittsburgh, so they haven't had anything since Payback, nor is there anything still announced to this day. So I'm like, why? What is going on? Usually there's something, in the wintertime, but there's nothing. There's nothing. I don't know what the deal is there, but needless to say, there started to be rumors about a certain somebody coming back. And this certain somebody just so happens to be the other wrestler I was talking about, and that is CM Punk. Absolutely was my all-time favorite wrestler in that whole Ruthless Aggression era, PG era, that was kind of coined the phrase reality era or whatever they wanted to coin the phrase of that era or whatever. CM Punk was my all-time favorite during that era, all the way from the debut in ECW, the ECW One Night Stand thing. I think that's where it was. And then he had the whole, run in the WWE ECW. And then on from there to the Straight Edge Society, so forth and so on. The best in the world, the whole undisputed champion between John Cena and him, all that stuff. I just loved all of that stuff, and I loved him as a pro wrestler. I mean, he was my number one for all that time. Then, of course, Bray Wyatt came into the scene right around the time where things started to wind down with Punk and WWE. And so it kind of overlapped. I went from him, and when he walked out, I was actually really pissed off at him. Okay, we didn't know the whole story at the time, and just knowing that there he is each week, and then find out that you pay for a ticket and he just walked out on you. It did not sit with me the right way. I can tell you that right now. It did not sit well with me, and I was super furious. But then, of course, as details come out, you start to understand why these things had to happen and things like that. So I understood, all right? But in the midst of that, Bray Wyatt was starting to take off, and I really started gravitating towards him. And that's where I kind of focused my energy as far as my love for pro wrestling. Then, like I said, Bray passes, and then a few months go by, and we start to hear these rumblings and these rumors that CM Punk could potentially come back to WWE. Now, I did watch his run in AEW, okay, and I enjoyed when he came back in AEW, okay? And all the things that went down there, I kind of have an idea of how and why that would have been a thing that went down. Obviously, we know that he's very set in his ways and wears his heart on his sleeve. That doesn't help the situation. But at the same time, I have my thoughts and opinions on the other people involved as well. So the thing about it is when he went to AEW, it reinvigorated his love for pro wrestling, okay? And so that got him to get the itch again and do it again. But the backstage environment at AEW was not going too well, okay? I'm sure he noticed it was very amateur, not very professional at all, considering those who are running it. I guess over time you could say it's getting better or whatever, but clearly you have to remember this, folks. Punk came from the WWE, and he spent a long time there, almost a decade before he actually left WWE, okay? So he had that whole structured environment for all those years. Then to come to AEW and see the chaos, I don't know that sat well. Obviously, he was the biggest star in the company when he came there. And so that plays a factor into it as well in his mind. But aside from all that, and aside from all the drama with AEW, then he gets into the fallout with AEW and Jack Perry and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, man, this is an absolutely terrible way to go out. And this all happened right around the same time Bray had passed. And I'm like, man, this is just like, I don't care about wrestling anymore. Screw this. So I stopped watching wrestling, and the podcast stopped because of it as well. The podcast kind of stopped when Bray Wyatt stopped coming around because it's more, like I said, this is a Bray Wyatt channel, and the focus was on him, even though we did cover other things on the show and things like that. But mainly a Bray Wyatt channel, a WWE channel, So then we get the rumors about Punk possibly coming back, like I said, at Survivor Series, which is in Chicago. Now, of course, I'm watching this show, and we knew Orton was coming back, Randy Orton, who I do like Orton, okay? We knew Randy Orton was coming back, so that wasn't really a surprise. And I'm just watching this show, and there's so many times in the past where you hoped, like, oh, man, this is the moment where he's going to come back, because CM Punk at one point did want to entertain the thought of coming back to WWE, and that's when he did the whole WWE backstage show with Renee Young, back when that was on Fox. He wasn't working directly with WWE there, but he was talking about them working for Fox. And in that time frame, it became known that he was actually interested and open to the idea of coming back to the WWE. Okay, so that was almost 5 years ago. So, I mean, at that point, he was already had the mindset of maybe I'll go back, But never anything happened with it, obviously. And then AEW started to come into fruition, which probably perked up his ears, like, oh, okay, somebody that isn't related to WWE that wants my services. Maybe I'll do this, because I think the WWE backstage gave him a little taste of getting back into pro wrestling, and he kind of liked it. So then when AEW came calling, he's like, all right, let's give this a shot. This is going to be good. So he goes there, and we know what happens. But he still had the itch for pro wrestling, and somewhere along the line, in the last few weeks, last month or whatever, he had communications with Triple H, and they had a really long conversation that was said to mend bridges, mend fences, and build new bridges. And I'm sure he realized that, okay, this WWE is not the same WWE I left, okay? The same doctors are not there. Things have gotten better in the medical department of WWE in the last 10 years. And as far as how it's run, obviously Vince is not running the show anymore. Triple H is running the show. Granted, he did have problems with Triple H back in the day, but Triple H himself has admitted he's a different person now. Punk's a different person now. Of course, Bruno Sammartino and Ultimate Warrior, these are all guys that Triple H helped facilitate coming back to WWE that completely blasted WWE into the ground, just the same as Punk did. But Triple H managed to get them to come back and mend those fences, and they were happy they did. And Punk, same thing here. So I'm watching this pay-per-view, PLE, and I'm like, there's just, you always have that in the back of your mind. Oh, this is going to be it. He's going to come back here. But no, because it's you've thought this so many times that you don't want to let yourself down. You're like, nah, he ain't going to come back here. This was Orton's moment, and this and that, and you're watching it, and the match ends, and they're all celebrating in the ring. And then the static hits. And I mean, I was like, whoa, for real? Okay. I flew up out of my seat, absolutely just could not believe it. Shocked. Jaw dropped to the floor. Could not believe it was happening. No matter what anybody was saying in the rumor mill or anything like that, here he is back on a WWE event on my screen. And I still, right now, even days later, I'm just like, it's so like in a twilight zone, just unreal to me. But great, I love it, okay? So when that happened, the second his music hit and he came out, man, the fire relit for my passion for wrestling. Like, it just reignited that instant. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. If he has that much passion and desire to be in the pro wrestling business and come back to WWE after everything that's happened and everything he said, and he's willing to be open and figure and hear them and see that they're a different place, a different company, and they all want to start on an even level playing field, basically starting fresh, got that passion again, wants to get out there, leave everything else in the past, move forward, and create and have the legacy that he wanted to leave in the wrestling world instead of that horrible way that he went out of AEW. Okay? So when that music hit and he came out, instantly I had the goosebumps. I felt the electricity, and I was like, oh man, wow. I had not felt that in so long because they kept it a secret so well that you really did not know anything was going to happen. That, I mean, I was just absolutely floored, and it totally reignited that flame just that fast. I'm like, wow. And it was great. It was a great feeling. I had not felt like that in so long about pro wrestling. And it was just an excellent, excellent moment. And so then, of course, we have Monday, where he comes out on Raw for the first time in almost 10 years to cut a promo. I'm sure everybody was waiting for him to come out there and just completely destroy AEW and everything like that. That was never going to happen. If you thought it was going to happen, you haven't been paying attention to WWE television for any kind of amount of time, because when they're number one, they don't refer to the competition and they don't acknowledge them, only if it's obviously necessary. And here it just isn't and wasn't necessary. He wants to move on. He wants to move forward. He's back in the WWE. The story is he's back in the WWE. That's the shocking part. And it's in and of itself, without even saying any words. Him coming out and coming down to the ring is the shocking part, and you don't need any words for that. Plus, he wanted to get it off his chest, with the fans, that he loves the fans. He wants to let them know, I do love you guys. And he has said this in the past in AEW and whatnot. And it was very, very similar to his promo in AEW with a few tweaks. But the reason he wanted to do that in front of the WWE crowd, and I know this is going to sound freaking crazy to all you pro wrestling fans out there, but this is the truth. The casuals, not all of them know that AEW is even a thing. There's people I've talked to, and I'm like, do you ever check out AEW? And they're like, what's AEW? They have no clue that it's even a thing. And then I tell them to go check it out. They go check it out. Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool, and then they get into it and whatnot. They had no idea it was a thing, okay? The casual viewer, believe it or not, folks, doesn't know it exists. But you know what? They know WWE exists because it's so big. It's so global. It is number one company. It is the major leagues, okay? And I'm sure they remember CM Punk because he had a long run there. So believe it or not, folks, when he came out there to talk to the audience, he had to talk and say these things because some of them, a lot of them out there, this is the first time they're seeing him back. They didn't really know that he was in AEW. Of course, all us hardcore fans knew, all us CM Punk fans knew that he was in AEW, but I'm talking about the casuals that don't gravitate to one wrestler or another. They just watch wrestling. They just watch WWE because they like watching WWE. And they're like, oh. And then they're like, oh, wow, CM Punk, yeah, I really like that guy. He's back. I'm telling you, you may think I'm crazy, especially with the reactions in the arena and everybody chanting CM Punk and this and that and the third. There's plenty of people out there that don't go to the arenas, that just watch the show at home, and they're completely oblivious that there's any other wrestling promotion on television. And it's the honest to God's truth, because I've spoken to people that don't know. Okay? The casual viewer. It's easy for us hardcore wrestling fans and everything else to be like, oh, could you possibly not know this? Well, it's true. They don't. There are plenty that don't. So we have to educate them on that. But, needless to say, those are the people he was talking to in the ring, plus everybody else, and it's a whole new beginning. It's like a new beginning, a fresh start, rebirth in WWE, okay, on a whole new level playing field. And of course, if you wanted your true CM Punk, you got it right in the last line when he looks in the camera and says, I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to make money. Because, he had to say that. He had to say that. And what everybody's kind of like, wait a minute, you just said the fans. Well, he's not talking about the fans. He's talking to the fans and saying everything's good. He's not talking about the fans there. He's talking about certain people in the back that aren't happy to see him. And quite frankly, it's a dig at Seth Rollins. I mean, that's where that's going. That's a dig at Seth Rollins, and it could be a dig at Roman Reigns and a few other people as well. But given everything that happened with Seth Rollins and then his promo earlier in the night, clearly, when he said he's not here to make friends, he's here to make money, that was just directed at Seth Rollins. That's just how Punk talks, and that's what gets him, talked about, is the way he talks and says things. And he slipped that line in right at the end, not on the microphone, just right into the camera. And that's exactly what you expect from CM Punk. And so I thought the promo itself was perfectly fine. It did what it had to do. first night back, he wanted to get in touch with the crowd again, especially the ones that have not seen him and did not know that he was in AEW. So he needed to get in touch with them again, let everybody know that, he's a changed person. And quite frankly, here's where everybody gets super mad when he said he's home. Yes, it seems hypocritical after all the blasting he did of the company, okay, and everything that happened to him. But here's the thing. Here's what people forget. He spent almost a decade in the company where he signed multiple contracts to continue to stay in said company. Nobody twisted his arm and said, you have to sign this contract to stay in the company. So for all that time, he wanted to stay in the company, or else he would have never signed the next contract. Okay? Because he had won multiple world heavyweight titles. He won multiple world heavyweight titles. 5, I do believe. 3, the world heavyweight title, and then 2 WWE championships, I think. So he has won multiple world heavyweight titles in the company. It's not like they completely shafted him. The one thing that they kept doing to him, though, is not sticking him in the direct main event, and he never got the direct main event at WrestleMania. And those are things that always didn't sit well with him, okay, which is understandable. And I'm sure those are things that he wants now that he's back, and we probably will get it. We probably will get that in some capacity. But needless to say, he spent almost a decade in the company previously, and he signed contracts to continue to stay in the company, okay? So, like I said, for those of you that are, oh man, it's not your home, well, it kind of is, because that's where he spent most of his career. He spent most of his career in WWE. So, when he comes back and he says, I'm home, and he even admitted, he's scared to admit how true they are, because they are true. There may have been direction that this promo had to go, okay? And it may have not have been as flying off the cuff as CM Punk is usually known for, but he even told you that right out of the gate. It's not going to sound like CM Punk, because he needed to get this out of his system. That the 2 words are, I'm home, and he's scared to say them because he's scared of how true they actually are. And they are true, because that's where he spent most of his time. Did he butt heads along the way? Yeah, of course he butted heads along the way. But that's just like Bret Hart, Bret Hart butted heads along the way, and the horrible fallout when Bret left and, got screwed over in his own country, his hometown country, with the Montreal screw job. And then not much longer after that, his brother dies while on a WWE pay-per-view. And all that happened, and he absolutely destroyed the company left and right. But eventually, he did make amends, and he did come back, and everything was, smoothed over, starting fresh. After all that, he still came back. He wanted to mend the fences. He didn't want to live with the anger anymore. He didn't want to live with the frustration anymore. Who wants to live like that anyway, where you're just constantly mad at something? Like, maybe I'm just crazy, or maybe, I don't know, I'm a different kind of grown up. But at some point, like when I was younger, yeah, I liked living like that because, edgy fun and this and that, and I'm angry at everything. But now in my 40s, I'm like, man, I'm getting too old for this. I need to just move on, and I need to smooth things over with things that were bad in the past, make amends with them, so that I can have peace of mind, Peace of mind goes a long way. And I think that's a lot of what CM Punk wants here, too, is peace of mind. He wants to start fresh. He wants to finish his career on his terms and actually leave a good lasting legacy instead of the bad one that was shaping up in AEW. And even before AEW, just the bitterness between him and WWE. I'm sure he wanted to smooth that over. And like I said, 5 years ago during WWE Backstage, he wanted to smooth things over then. He was open to smoothing things over then. Okay? So when he says, I'm home, and you get mad about it, you ain't paying attention. Because CM Punk spent most of his career in WWE, and he signed multiple contracts to do so. And he was World Heavyweight Champion multiple times. Vince and him butted heads, So Vince didn't put him in the main events. He kept him in the mid-card spot or at the beginning of the show, wrestling still as the WWE champion or World Heavyweight champion. But you have to remember that he also let him have a 434-day reign as WWE champion, which in that time, when that happened, that wasn't happening. Like, nobody held on to titles for more than a couple months, maybe 3 months tops in that era. During that era, nobody was holding on to titles past 3 months. That would be the maximum. So for Punk to hold on to the title for 434 days, the longest reign of that time frame, said something, because they could have easily put it on John Cena. They could have put it on anybody at the time, right? Orton or anybody like that. But they kept it on Punk. They kept it on Punk for all that time because, well, it was working. And even though they didn't put him in the main event, which was a problem, they kept putting John Cena in the main event because Vince, has a hard-on for John Cena. So there wasn't going to be much of a way around that because, well, Vince has a hard-on for John Cena, and that's just the way it is. Nobody was getting the main event unless you were in the match with John Cena. Let's just put it that way. Let alone Punk. Nobody else was getting it either. Okay? So keep that in mind. He wasn't singled out in that notion. It was just because John Cena and Vince and John Cena, you know how it goes. But he always wanted that WrestleMania main event. He never got that WrestleMania main event. And now he may get that WrestleMania main event finally. Of course, people are going to say you don't have to have the main event to be the main event as long as you steal the show. And that is true. And he had actually done that before in the past. A couple times at WrestleMania, stealing the show. I know you want the Rebel CM Punk and this and that, but he's getting older, man. He doesn't want to harbor all these feelings anymore. And with the stuff in AEW, I'm going to address it right now. When he said he's working with children, he's not wrong. Okay? When people don't want to take veteran advice and make themselves better for it, and they think they know everything and all that stuff, screw that, dude. Screw that. Anything I've ever done in my life, I've taken veteran advice to further better myself. It's just the way of life. You can't just go in and say, well, I'm better than everybody because I'm just better. I know what I'm doing. I don't need no damn help. Well, that doesn't always work out for you. It really doesn't. It's a very dangerous line to toe. You're riding on the edge doing that. And the fact is that that's what was happening in AEW, and he was offended by that. Hell, Britt Baker was just complaining she didn't have a promo, any mic time at all in 2023, which is just absolutely mind-blowing to think. Like, I don't know why that's a thing, but apparently that's a thing. That's just crazy to me. But then to have a guy like Jack Perry, freaking Dylan from 90210's son, Luke Perry's son, sit here and say, no, I want to use a real windshield because, I'm dumb. Using a real windshield, risking like legit serious injury, I don't care who you are. Oh, man, I like to watch those hardcore matches because, man, that's more adult and this and that. And da-da-da-da. It's cool. It's more edgy. Yes, that is true, but they're risking their life, literally life, because they could get a severe cut if things go wrong on real glass, risking their life for a scripted fighting event. Literally, you're going and watching a theater production. Could you imagine going to the theater and watching a live theater production where they're legitimately injuring each other to make the theater show that much better? It would be a little weird and disturbing, but it should be just as weird when you think about it in pro wrestling. Okay, we're going to legitimately injure ourselves to make this a cool match. Like I said, I enjoy AEW, but there's aspects to it like that I do not. So when you have all that and Punk doesn't, that's not how Punk came up through the wrestling business, okay? And he's also very old school. He thinks that you should be taking help from the veterans and things like that. And then you're going to go and off the script and just do your own thing and go through real windshields and everything else. I mean, it infuriated him, and I could see why. Like, I could understand that. Especially given that he was the biggest star at the time in the company. It's making him look bad for even for even it happening to begin with. Like, he didn't say not to maybe suggest not doing that or whatever. Of course, he's not going to stand up for that. So they get into a scuffle, they get into a fight, and The little Coke man Tony there, probably all paranoid on Coke, was fearing for his life. He should have feared for, the Coke overdosing him instead. But then they decide, well, we're going to let Punk go. He ain't going to have that environment in WWE. Nope, not with the strict structure in place in the WWE. That ain't going to fly. Plus the rumor of the behavioral clause in his contract, everything, anything like that's just not going to go down. Most of the locker room in WWE are not troublemakers. They're grown, mature people, mature adults, believe it or not, unlike some people. There was one recently that wasn't so much a grown and mature adult, and, well, he's not there anymore. Talking about Matt Riddle. I mean, he's still got some life issues to go through, apparently. But, yeah. Having Punk back in the WWE is good for everybody. It's good for TV. It's good for everything. And it's good for him because he can now finish out his career on his terms and leave a good, lasting legacy and maybe even get that Hall of Fame induction in too as well. And I'm just happy to see it. I'm just happy to see him back, and he's going to end things on his terms and mark my words, and there's no doubt about this, this is most likely his last chance at righting the wrongs and leaving a good legacy, making sure his legacy is a good one left behind in pro wrestling, because absolutely it most likely is his last chance at it. So, and what better place to go and define your legacy once and for all than in the WWE, the biggest wrestling promotion out there, and the major leagues. People are like, oh, it's just what's funny to me is people will say, you say the WWE is the big leagues or major leagues, and they're like, oh, well, it's all just scripted wrestling. How can it be one or bigger than the other? And this and that. It's all just scripted wrestling. And then if I say, well, why are you going through a real windshield when it's just scripted wrestling? You shouldn't do that. You're just endangering yourself for no reason. I don't know, kind of like you're contradicting yourself there, being a hypocrite like you like to say Punk is, right? So there you go. Yeah, that's just my view on it. Like I said, I am not opposed to AEW. I like AEW. I like TNA. There's just those aspects that I'm going to point out that are, Punk related that needed to be pointed out, because I'm just trying to think in terms of what was he thinking when he came there and saw how things were run. I mean, Cody left and he founded the company. He is a founder of AEW, and he left. When he left, I thought to myself, man, they're just clearly something's going on there where he's like, I had to get out of here. Okay. And Punk, the same thing, because Cody was used to that WWE structure, that structured environment, and Punk, same thing. He's used to that structure and the way things operate, and to go into that chaos, man, I'm just speculating, just an opinion, but just imagine going from all that structure all those years to the chaos, and then same thing with Cody, he founded the company, and yet he's back in WWE. Lately, it has not been that great. AEW has not been that great lately. They were on fire for a while, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is crazy. Now they've kind of regressed, and, you have your things on the show that's good, but, man, it's really kind of fallen off a cliff otherwise. So they need to get back on track, and quite frankly, one of their downfalls is constantly worrying about WWE. Stop worrying about WWE. Stop it. Do what got you to where you were to begin with, and just focus on being AEW. Don't worry about WWE. Don't worry about talking about them and worrying about them. Just do your thing and get the matches out there and do your stories amongst your people. Build stars of your own, and worry about them. Concern yourself with them. Hope that they're getting better. Find out if they're happy. Things like that. Because otherwise, this is what happens. You got Cody Rhodes coming back to WWE. You got Jade Cargill, who was a homegrown talent over there at AEW, now coming to WWE. And WWE is like, wow, you need some work, and it ain't your fault, because of what happened over here. She wasn't quite ready for prime time, in the big leagues, so to speak. And it's not her fault at all. And then, of course, you get Punk coming in and everything else. And, hey, it was kind of funny, when Punk got drafted to Raw back in the day, like, oh, we got Punk for Edge or whatever. And now Edge goes to AEW, and we get Punk. Just kind of weird how that works. Storyline to reality, so to speak. But, it did hurt AEW, Punk coming over to WWE. Even though he fired Punk, I guarantee you never thought in a million years, he ain't going to WWE. Well, yeah, he did. He did. So, it does not look good. And if this all comes to fruition to where Punk has a good run in WWE and there's no, turmoil or anything like that, he's going to be able to say, see, I'm completely fine over here. Over there is the problem. He's going to have that ammunition to use if everything goes smoothly in WWE, which I think it will this time. I really do. And there's the probability of AJ Lee, his wife, April, coming back and at the very least, doing like a Royal Rumble match, I could totally see that happening. So we may look forward to that. She may make an appearance in the Royal Rumble as a surprise. That would be kind of cool. But there's always potential for her to come back and get in the mix again. And she may get the itch again. She didn't leave on bad terms. She never left on bad terms. So it would be even more welcoming if she came back, right? And so, yeah. But I just want to let you guys know that the podcast is back. I'm going to aim for, right now I'm aiming to do a podcast maybe once a week. And if I don't get once a week, we're going to do definitely a podcast every PLE, every pay-per-view, okay? And like I said, it's a WWE-focused channel. Not opposed to all the other wrestling companies. I enjoy them, but this is just WWE focused because it's all I really have time to focus on. And now it went from a Bray Wyatt channel to now it's going into a CM Punk channel. We are a pro CM Punk channel, and that's just the way it is. So if you don't like that, hey man, you don't have to listen. You don't have to watch any of that stuff. But this is a pro CM Punk channel, and, well, if you're not down with that, well, you know the two words. So, quite frankly, I'm excited. Him coming back really fired me up. Coming back to the WWE, nonetheless, really fired me up. And it made me feel damn good when he did, especially after what happened to Bray. So, RCW podcast is back, and we're focusing on CM Punk now. And everything, his little journey now back in the WWE. So, that's about all I got for you today, folks. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, share, blah, 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 blah. All that good stuff. And with that said, I'll catch you all down the road.